So today we would talk on the practical approach towards pitfalls in childhood immunization. Immunization is a bread and butter for the pediatrician, and uh, though we consider it to be very easy and very practical thing, there are lot many problems that arise, and a pediatrician has to face those. And if not cleared out, or if we don't know how to prevent those uh, pitfalls, or if we cannot identify those pitfalls, we can land up in many problems. And therefore it is very necessary to identify those problems before they arise and try to find out a solution and for them, and also try to prevent those problems from arising. So the first thing what we should do before a vaccination session or immunization session, we should first go and counsel the parents. The parents have come up with their child for immunization to your OPD, and okay, you have this vaccine today, and so we will give it, administer it immediately. Instead of doing that, we need to talk to our parents for about a few minutes, clear out their doubts, and talk to them about the possible risks, the possible availabilities of vaccines, and the usefulness of vaccines, of multiple vaccines, multiple vaccination, single vaccination, monovalent, and all those things. So that once they are their doubts are cleared, it becomes easy, and they don't then try to blame the pediatrician in case if any reaction arises. They will have, or they will, that will, this counseling will bring up a faith of the parents into the pediatrician. So when you counsel the parents, the counseling should include a few things. One, the first and foremost thing, you should tell them that we are giving this vaccine to prevent this disease, but that does not mean that there are 100% chance that there will be no disease. Your child, though immunized for this disease, does not mean that it will never develop that disease. Yes, the chances of developing that disease is less as compared to unimmunized child, but there still remains a minimal chance of developing that disease. Then the question arises, why to give the vaccine? So we can tell them that once the vaccine is given, your child gets immunized and your child gets primed to that organism or that antigen, and then that will, when the disease comes up because of that antigen, it will be in a very milder form. It will not land up into complications. Hospitalization can be prevented, and this vaccine is going to prevent the morbidity. So you need to counsel them and tell them that vaccine prevents the disease, but it does not guarantee 100% 100% that there will be no development of that disease. The chance of developing that disease still remains even after giving the vaccine. The second thing what we need to counsel is about the efficacy and safety of the vaccine. Some vaccines are more efficacious than other of the same disease. Like the wholesale pertussis vaccine has a slighter upper hand than the acellular pertussis for the immunogenicity of the vaccine. Both are equal, but still WP vaccines, they have a better chance, the better immunogenicity. Their immunity which has been developed lasts longer, and that has been proved throughout. So you can tell them that the efficacy is this way. Safety of the vaccine, yes, you need to counsel them that after measles vaccine you might develop some neurological problems, the patient might again develop measles. Yes, uh, for pertussis vaccine there are high chances of developing convulsion, febrile convulsions. So some safety issues are there. A child, you might not be knowing that the child is hypersensitive to some of the component. So any component of the vaccine can develop any reaction. It might be even anaphylactic. So we need to tell them that vaccines are safe, generally safe, but still they have some serious issues which might come up. One in a million cases are possible, though they are most of the times safe. We should also counsel them about the available vaccines for the same disease. Like I have already spoken of, that we need to talk to them about, in case of pertussis, we have two types of vaccine, the acellular pertussis and the wholesale pertussis. So we need to tell them what is the difference between them and how both of them are different from each other, and what are the benefits of one and what are the benefits of the others. Also, we have nowadays uh, combination vaccines, we have pentavalents, we have hexavalents. So we need to tell them that these are the vaccines available. We even have monovalent vaccines for DPT. So we need to talk to them about, yes, these are the vaccines available, and which one we are going to administer to the patient, and why we are preferring that vaccine for that patient. Then we should talk to them about the cost effectivity, because combination vaccines are costly than the monovalent vaccines. Again, some brands or some companies, they have a higher cost of the same vaccine than the other company. So we need to talk them about the cost of the vaccine, so as to prevent unnecessary uh, collisions between the patient or relatives and the doctor after administration of the vaccine, because of the small issues like cost. Before administering a vaccine, a proper history should be taken of the patient, and this history should include the allergies which have been seen in the past, noted in the past, or any hypersensitivity reaction which has been seen in the past. All history points should be taken, but the importance should be laid on allergies and hypersensitivities, because if a patient is hypersensitive to some of the component of the vaccine, that vaccine cannot be again administered, and therefore we need to know this. And this history should not be only limited to the patient, but also a family history is necessary. So complete personal and family history should be taken of the patient, which should include history of allergy and hypersensitivity. Like for allergies, we have, if someone has got egg protein allergy, we cannot administer him some vaccines like that of yellow fever, or we have to be very cautious while administering a vaccine of chickenpox and MMR. So a history of allergies and hypersensitivity is necessary. Before administering any vaccine, a consent should be taken from the parents, that they have understood the benefits of the vaccine, they have very well understood what complications can arise out of the vaccine after administration. You have cleared out their doubts, and they are giving us the permission to immunize, to inoculate the child, to immunize the child against that vaccine. This consent should be preferably written, because if some medico legal issue arises, we will be safe while giving up a consent. While giving a consent, a written consent will stand in the court of law. A total vaccination consent is generally not preferred. On every visit for vaccination, a separate consent should be taken ideally. Sorry. If a common consent is to be taken, it should be taken up on their vaccination card, where you can write down a common consent for all the vaccines. But still, in the case of, in the court of law, a individual consent for individual vaccine, a separate consent for individual vaccine will always be beneficial for the doctors. A consent is also necessary in case of vaccine refusal. See, in India, we have two types of vaccination programs. One is a compulsory vaccine program, and second one is a optional vaccine program. A patient has the right to refuse a vaccine. Optional vaccine, if it is not taken, it's fine. But compulsory vaccines, they are necessary. But still, there might be some social issues, social causes, family issues, religious beliefs, and they might refuse the vaccine even the compulsory vaccines also. So in that case, if the patient is refusing any vaccine, a consent should be taken in presence of some witness. A written consent is necessary over here. You cannot force a vaccine on a child. The law does not permit that, and therefore we have to take a vaccine refusal consent also. What do we need to check before vaccination, before administering a vaccine? The availability, the viability of the vaccine, the benefit of the vaccine, or the vaccine, whether it is useful or no, or whether it is out of use, is checked on the color of the vaccine vial monitor. The vaccine vial monitor should be checked before every administration of the dose of vaccine. There are 4 colors which are available depending upon the temperature. Once the vaccines need to be stored in a cold chain, a cold chain has to be maintained, and if the cold chain is broken, the color of the vaccine vial monitor is going to change. Grade 1 and grade 2, they are acceptable. The color grade 1 and grade 2, color grade 1 is no color or white color, and grade 2 is light purple. So if the vaccine vial monitor color has changed to grade 1 or 2, the vaccine is administered or it is acceptable. But the color of the vial, if it has changed to grade 3 or grade 4, then it is indicative of that the cold chain has been broken and we should not use that vaccine anymore. So color of VVM should be checked before administering the vaccine. Check the vial, a multi-dose vial specifically, for the time lapsed after reconstituting the vaccine or after the first utilization of the first dose of the vaccine of the vial. Like BCG, multi-dose vial, you get a multi-dose vial and it's reconstituted vaccine. A MR vaccine is a multi-dose vial, you reconstitute it before administering it. It's a freeze-dried vaccine. So there is some time limit within which that reconstituted vaccine is to be utilized. So check for the time, and to not to miss out that time and not to miss out the date. Once the vaccine is reconstituted, write on the vial the name, the date and the time at which it was reconstituted. There is some time limit within which that vial should be utilized. So before administering the dose, check the vial for the time lapsed after reconstitution. If it is like a pentavalent multi-dose vial, there are some rules or guidelines, I would say, given by the WHO, where we should, how long we can use that multi-dose vial. So once you use an already ready to use vaccine, just check on, have an habit of writing the date on the vial when it was opened, and you can check out when the first dose of that vaccine was utilized from that vial. Check the vial for physical contamination or non-uniformity or any precipitation. Check all precautionary life-saving drugs and equipments in the OPD. The vaccine might give an anaphylactic reaction, though it has not given it in the past doses. Any dose can arise an anaphylactic reaction from the child. And to prevent that, you cannot prevent an anaphylaxis, but to prevent the complications or prevent further damage to the patient, we need to have life-saving drugs and equipments in the OPD where we are going to administer the vaccine. And those life-saving drugs include hydrocortisone, adrenaline, and oxygen. And the equipments would include an intubation material. And the most important, always store the vaccines away from direct light that disintegrates the vaccine. So they should always be stored preferably in dark. This is the vaccine vial monitor. The stage 1 and stage 2 color change is allowed, the grade 1 and grade 2. Grade 3 and 4 are not allowed. These are present on all vaccines, all vaccine vials. We can check it out before administering the vaccine. The grade 1 and grade 2 are allowed. Now, everything we have counseled the parents have consented for vaccine. We are going to administer the vaccine. We need to follow some general guidelines about vaccination. What are those guidelines? Follow the schedule. Don't skip the schedule. Don't prepone the schedule. Don't postpone the schedule. These things should never be done unnecessarily. Follow the schedule, what is being advised by the local authorities or the government or the WHO. The local authorities or the local government has prepared that schedule in consultation with a expert committee, and that schedule should be followed. Don't unnecessarily prepone the vaccines or unnecessarily postpone the vaccines. Secondly, there is a belief that preterm child should not be administered a vaccine at birth, or a low birth weight child should not be administered a vaccine until it becomes of 2 kilos or 2.5 kilos. These are not really true. Preterm neonates can be administered vaccine at birth, including hepatitis B. Yes, the immunogenicity of hepatitis B might differ, but hepatitis B has to be administered at birth itself, provided the patient is hemodynamically stable. If the patient is stable, you can administer that vaccine. You can repeat that dose. But if the mother is hepatitis B positive, then even if the baby is in an NICU, you need to give them an hepatitis B vaccine within 12 hours of birth, and along with that, you need to give hepatitis B antisera so that it can be used, immunoglobulins, sorry, not antisera, immunoglobulins, so that it is to be administered. And then after the baby has stabilized, later on you can follow the routine immunization schedule. So all preterm neonates can be administered vaccines according to their chronological age at their respective chronological age, irrespective of their birth weight, whatsoever their birth weight might be. At the time of administration of vaccine, at the chronological age, irrespective of that weight, you can give it. Like if the child was born of 1 kilo and at 1.5 months it is just 2 kilos, and you need to give it an DPT, you have to administer it because the chronological age is of 6 weeks, and therefore you can give that vaccine. Some vaccines are given multiple times, like the triple vaccine. The pentavalent vaccine is given thrice. MMR has to be given twice. Chickenpox has to be given twice. Hepatitis A has to be given twice. So there has to be some span between these two doses. These spans are of two types. One is the recommended span and one is the minimal span. The recommended span should be followed. That gives a better immune response, that develops a better immune response in the child. The minimum span can be followed also, but you should not prepone the vaccine before that minimum interval. Like the pentavalent vaccine or the DPT vaccine, we will say, there should be a span of 6 weeks around in between two doses. The acellular vaccine, there should be a span of around 8 weeks between two doses. This is the recommended span. But the minimum span is 4 weeks. Before 4 weeks, you should not administer the second dose. So the minimum span should at least be followed if you are not able to follow the recommended span. If the second dose is given 4 or less days before the minimum span, it will be considered valid. Okay, means if a dose was to be given after 30 days, the second dose to be given after 30 days of the first dose, if you give it on the 27th day, it will be considered valid. But any vaccine dose, the second dose, if it is given before that, before 4 days, that is 5 days, 6 days, then it will be invalid. Like if you give the DPT second dose after 22 days, it is an invalid dose. So minimal interval should be followed. Do not prepone that. In such cases, if a dose is given prior to that, prior to 4 days, then in that case, the second dose which has been given is invalid, and the minimum span should be followed for the next dose after the invalid dose. Like the first dose was given on the 1st of February, the second one was to be given on the 1st of March, but still you gave it on the 21st of February, so that is an invalid dose. So the second dose will be repeated again on 21st of March, and that will be the valid second dose. Not given on the 1st of March will be counted as valid. Okay. Many a times in the OPD practice, we find out that a child comes up to you for immunization. He doesn't have any records of it. You don't know the immunization status of the child. So what should be done? In this case, the child should be considered unimmunized if he cannot give any valid document of immunization. And the patient should be immunized accordingly as per the age. Patient should be relied upon, true, but not in all cases. The patient might say that I have taken measles, I have taken chickenpox, I have taken hepatitis, but in absence of any valid documentation, those doses are not to be counted. An extra dose is going to cause no harm than the not giving the same dose. Self-reported doses should not be accepted in the absence of documentation. Only 2 doses or 2 injections are accepted, 2 vaccines are accepted where the patient says that yes, I had taken that. One is influenza and second one is the PPSV, that is the pure polysaccharide pneumococcal vaccine. Only these 2 should be relied upon the patient if the patient says that he has taken it. Vaccine can be administered even if the child has had a history of the same disease in the past. Like in chickenpox, we say once the patient had chickenpox, he is not going to get it for the whole life. But a patient might come up saying that he had got chickenpox. Should we vaccinate him again? Yes, you should, because there might be misdiagnosis. A patient comes up and says that he had measles, so should we again vaccinate that child for measles? Yes, because there are chances of misdiagnosis in the past, and therefore a vaccine can be administered even if the child had that same disease or the history of the same disease in the past. Some things we need to refrain from. We should not do that ever. One, unnecessary rescheduling of the vaccination period. We should not do that unnecessarily unless or until it is really very necessary. Follow the guidelines. We should not fractionalize the dose. In the sense, if the dose is 1 ml, we should give it as 1 ml dose, not half an ml or 0.25 ml or something like that. We should never do that, because it will not initiate an adequate response to the antigen. Fractional dosing is allowed by the WHO only for IPV, where we nowadays give 0.1 ml of IPV through the intradermal route. Otherwise, the dose of IPV is 0.5 ml. So fractional dosing is not allowed except for IPV. We should not skip the doses. There are guidelines where the doses are reduced, but unnecessarily we should not skip them. We have 3 doses in primary immunization. We should give them 3 doses. We have 2 doses in primary immunization. We should give them 2 doses. We had 3, but we have given 2. That is enough. That can develop an adequate immunity. It never happens so. So don't even skip the doses. Don't overdose unnecessarily. 1 ml of vaccine, give 1 ml only. If the vaccine is to be repeated 3 years, don't give it before that. The commonest thing happens with tetanus. A child has had complete vaccination up to 18 months. He falls down at the age of 2.5 years. He's hurt. He has got a wound. And the parents say that he fell down and we need to give a tetanus dose. And we administer that dose. That is not necessary, because if a child has been adequately immunized up to 18 months, the immunity is going to sustain up to 5 years. So unnecessarily don't overdose the patient. That might cause complication. Don't unnecessarily reschedule the vaccines. Maintain minimum interval between 2 doses. We get pre-filled vaccines, pre-filled syringes, and we get multi-dose vials. The pre-filled syringes, what we get, they are all glass syringes. Multi-dose vials, they are glass vials, and then we extract out the vaccine and give it through the disposable syringe, which are made up out of non-reactive plastic. When we have an vaccination day in government hospitals, mostly of the times, or the institutional vaccination, it so happens that there is a rush and we need to finish off the things faster. So what we do initially, what people might be doing is they pre-fill the syringes initially. That should not be done ever. For every patient, fill the syringe in front of the patient. That helps in 2 ways. The patient is satisfied that there is no reusage of the syringes. Every patient gets a new syringe. And sometimes in plastic, the syringes, the vaccine might be inactivated. It might react with the plastic, and therefore it might cause a reaction to the patient. So prevent pre-filling of plastic syringes. Don't unnecessarily interchange the vaccines. Like we have 2 different types of rota vaccines where we have 2 components and we have 4 components, 4 antigens and 2 antigens. So if the first dose was of 2 antigens, the second should be preferably of 2 antigens only. If it was of 4 antigen, use the 4 antigen rota only. Don't interchange. First time we have given 2 antigens, the second time we are giving 4 antigen. Don't do that ever. It does not generate an adequate immune response. Similarly with hepatitis A, we have an inactivated vaccine and we have a live vaccine. If the first dose was of an inactivated vaccine, the second dose should be of an inactivated vaccine only, not a live vaccine. So don't interchange the vaccine components. That is necessary. Don't use pure polysaccharide vaccines before 2 years of age. Before 2 years of age, there is an advisory to use only conjugate vaccine and not polysaccharide vaccines. The choice and dose of the vaccine should be understood. Look for better immunogenicity. Like previously I have spoken that whole cell pertussis gives a better immune response. The immunity lasts longer. Give that choice to the patient. We have these things. We have these better things of the first vaccine. We have these better things of the second vaccine. These are the pros. These are the cons. But choose wisely. Choose the vaccine which gives you adequate dosing. The problem comes up with Tdap and DTAP. DTAP is to be used only up to the age of 18 months. After that, it is Tdap which is to be used. DTAP has got an adequate pertussis and diphtheria content. After 5 years of age, we require a reduced diphtheria and pertussis component. So Tdap and DTAP, they are not similar to each other. The antigen load is different. We need to use an adequate dose of vaccine. Sometimes it does happen that the patient had taken his first vaccine at some other place, and he has come to you after for the second dose, and you don't have the same brand which he has used. So in that case, if the vaccine other brand is used, see to it the antigens are the same and administered it. Then in that case, the change of brand does not matter. But if the antigen component differs, then in that case, use the vaccine in more doses for the antigen which has been told. Like for pertussis, if it is 2 antigen vaccine, then in that case give it for more doses than the 4 dose. For if it is like rotavirus, 2 antigen rotavirus is 2 dose adequate, 4 antigen is 3 dose. So if the first dose was given 2 antigen and the second one was 4 antigen, then 3 doses of rotavirus should be given of 4 antigen rather than just 2 doses, because the first was given as 2 doses. That should not be done. So the higher number of recommended doses should always be utilized in case of change of vaccine. Multiple simultaneous vaccination, you can administer 2 or more live vaccines at the same time on the same day at 2 different sites. But if you are not giving 2 or more vaccines on the same day, live vaccines, then there should be a span of 4 weeks between 2 live vaccines. Inactivated vaccines can be given anytime with no specific span between 2 different antigens. Like if we are giving OPV, if we are giving rotavirus, or if we are giving chickenpox, or if we are giving measles, 2 doses are required. The minimum span between these 2 should be 4 weeks. Or I would say, if you are giving measles today and you want to give a chickenpox, then between these 2, 4 weeks should be maintained. You cannot give a second live vaccine within 15 days or 7 days or 21 days of the administration of first live vaccine. Like you have given MMR on the 1st of April and you want to give chickenpox, that should be given only after 28 days of chickenpox and not any time before that. The only condition where this rule does not apply, the only vaccine where this rule does not apply is for OPV, rotavirus, and live oral typhoid vaccination. In these cases, you can administer these any times in case of an outburst of epidemic. Any number of inactivated vaccine can be given along with a live vaccine or in between the live vaccine. Any combination of inactivated vaccines can be given at the same time in a patient at 2 different sites, except in 2 conditions, I would say. The meningococcal vaccine and the pneumococcal vaccine should not be given on the same day. This is one thing. And in case of HIV, the pneumococcal vaccine should not be given, PPSV should not be given with MCV again. That should be kept in mind. An inactive vaccine can be given simultaneously along with any or at any interval with a live vaccine. Even after 8 days of today you have given a live vaccine and after 8 days you give an inactivated vaccine, that is acceptable, but not a live vaccine. 2 live vaccines should be given either simultaneously or at least 4 weeks apart. As I have already told, the exception for this are OPV, rotavirus, and oral typhoid vaccine. Yellow fever vaccine is a travel vaccine which is not used routinely. Therefore, yellow fever vaccine, if you are going out of country into the specific areas where the yellow fever is endemic, then you can have it anytime in between. Only for these 4 live vaccines, there is no rule of between the vaccine span to be maintained. Maintain the lower age recommendation for initiation of upper and lower age limit. A DPT vaccine is to be given at 6 weeks. Don't give it before that. This is the lower age minimum requirement. A rotavirus vaccine should be given at 6 weeks. This is the lower age limit when it can be started. Maintain the upper age limit. A rotavirus vaccine ideally should be completed by 6 months of age. The most maximum thing which can happen is 8 months of age. So finish it off up to that time. The upper age limit has to be maintained. The lower age limit recommendation and the upper age limit recommendation should be maintained. As I have already told, the WHO has some guidelines while using the multi-dose vials. If we use a multi-dose vial for a pre-constituted vaccine, not a pre-constituted, which has already been there and which is ready to use, that vial, multi-dose vial, should be used within 1 month of opening that vaccine, not after that. So a 1 month span is acceptable after you open a multi-dose vial for a ready to use vaccine. Like we use pentavalent vaccine, we use multi-dose tetanus vaccine. Nowadays tetanus is not available, we get DT vaccine, TDVac, what you call it as. So you can use it, but within 1 month of opening the vaccine. That happens in inactivated vaccines. But if you are reconstituting the vaccines at the time, then if it is a live vaccine, the BCG, measles and MMR, if they are multi-dose vaccines or even a single dose vaccine where you are reconstituting it, it should be used within 6 hours, 4 to 6 hours of reconstitution. If you are reconstituted, you have prepared the vaccine at 8 AM in the morning, the maximum time by what you have to finish that vial is 2 PM. After that, throw up the remaining vaccine. Don't use it. If you are reconstituting a live vaccine like chicken pox, it should be utilized within half an hour, what we call it as immediate utilization, within half an hour of reconstitution. And if we are reconstituting or mixing inactivated vaccines which are allowed by that specific brand, by that specific company who has manufactured it, then in that case we should use it within half an hour of reconstitution. While using multi-dose vial, prevent contamination of the vaccine, and contamination can be prevented by 2 ways. Do not leave a needle in place after removal of the vaccine from the vial. We have an habit that we leave the needle in place in the cap of the vaccine vial so as to make it easy for withdrawal in the next time. That should not be done. You can pierce the vial n number of times, and before piercing, the cap of the vial should be sterilized by using alcohol. So prevent contamination of the vial. Another practical problem arises in the OPD where the schedules are missed out for vaccination. Means the first dose of vaccine was given at an appropriate age and the patient has not turned up for a long time for the second dose. So what should be done in these cases? The missed immunization does not require restarting of the entire series, or it does not require any extra addition of the doses. Like if the DPT was given at 6 weeks and the patient has again for the second time reported at 6 months, we need not restart the DPT schedule of 3 doses. Nor do we require to give them 4 doses because the first dose was given much earlier and the immunity will be lost. No. In these cases, you should start the vaccine from where it was left off. Means the first dose was given at 6 weeks, the child has turned to at 6 months. So at that time, you will give him the second dose of DPT. You need not restart the entire series. Neither do you need to add any extra doses to that. Again, the second thing, in case of unknown immunization status, the child should be considered unimmunized and should be vaccinated accordingly. Self-reported doses should not be considered at all, except for influenza and pneumococcal vaccines. In the last few years, an adolescent vaccination has come up, and parents are getting more and more cautious, and they ask about the necessity of adolescent vaccination to a child during his adolescence. Why is adolescent vaccination important? Adolescent vaccination gives protection against the diseases that have high morbidity, like the hepatitis A disease or chickenpox, or against those diseases which have higher incidence during the adolescent period, like the mumps or the meningococcal infection. This is one reason why we need to give adolescent vaccines. The second reason is it helps in boosting the waning immune response which has been achieved during the primary immunization. After some years of primary immunization, the immune response starts waning off. We need to boost that response so that those diseases do not catch up again in the later age group, and therefore for that reason we need to give a adolescent vaccine or a vaccine in the adolescent age of that for that specific disease, like in case of pertussis, like in case of diphtheria, like in case of rubella. The third reason is there should be a provision of protection against disease appearing during adulthood. Pertussis has re-emerged in adulthood, so we need to have a provision to protect the patient against pertussis of adulthood, and therefore adolescent vaccination is necessary. Sometimes in adolescence, vaccines are administered to eliminate some diseases which can, or to prevent some diseases which can cause complications in the later age group, like measles or rubella, which can cause congenital rubella syndrome. So we need to immunize that child in the adolescence age. The tendency of the adolescent to indulge in certain risky activities such as substance abuse, intravenous drug administration, exposing them to certain diseases which are vaccine preventable diseases like hepatitis B or HPV. We need to give them vaccines during the adolescence period if they are not already vaccinated in case of hepatitis B, and HPV is given during the adolescence period only. If a child is going to go for is going for travel is going to travel for study purpose or any other purpose abroad, then travel vaccines which are mandatory need to be given. They are all advised by the WHO what area requires what specific. Like if when someone is going for Hajj, and meningococcal vaccine is mandatory. Sorry, if someone is going for the sub-Saharan African countries, you require a yellow fever vaccine. If you are going for further studies or settle down in the North American countries or in the Western European countries, a pertussis vaccine again is to be given up. So these are the necessities of adolescent vaccine. Adolescent vaccination can be used as an opportunity to catch up those opportunities which have missed the vaccines. Initially, you have missed those vaccines in the primary immunization. So adolescent age group can be utilized as that opportunity where you can re-inoculate, you can immunize the patient against those diseases which have been left off. There are some travel vaccines. Travel vaccines can be divided into two groups. One is mandatory, one is selective. Mandatory, without administering of that vaccine, you cannot enter the banned zone. You cannot enter the areas where those vaccines are mandatory. Like I have already told, the African countries, they require yellow fever as a mandatory vaccine, and for Hajj, they require the meningococcal vaccine. If you are going to the endemic areas, some countries prefer that you get inoculated to the disease, to that vaccine. Those are known as selective vaccines. Those are the hepatitis A vaccine, the Japanese encephalitis vaccine, the typhoid vaccine, the cholera vaccine. These vaccines are not a part of routine immunization schedule in few countries. But when you are going to an endemic country, you need to have these vaccines. Like hepatitis A or typhoid is not a part of an routine vaccination in Europe or North America or Canada. But when you come to India, that has to be taken as a selective vaccine for traveling purposes. When you travel, you need to carry a written record of all vaccines that have been administered, and preferably these should be on a format prescribed by the international authorities. For the yellow fever, the format is specific given by the WHO, and vaccine is administered only at WHO designated sites. So that doesn't make any difference. That format is acceptable everywhere. But for other vaccines, the doctor should clearly mention what vaccine was given, when it was given, and for what purpose it was given. Now, initially I have told that you should not unnecessarily prepone the vaccines. A recommended period should be maintained between 2 doses of the vaccine. But in some cases, like a break of an epidemic, or if you are to travel abroad, the schedule can be accelerated. But while accelerating this schedule, maintain minimum recommended interval between the 2 doses. Means if the recommended interval is 6 weeks and the minimum interval is 4 weeks, maintain at least 4 weeks interval between 2 doses. 6 weeks if you can maintain, it's well and good. But if you can't, don't administer before 4 weeks. 4 weeks is acceptable. Vaccines for healthcare workers. Healthcare workers like the doctors, the medicos, the paramedical workers, they all should be vaccinated for a few diseases irrespective of the work condition. And those include hepatitis B disease, the influenza. You can administer inactivated influenza vaccine or the live attenuated influenza vaccine. The Tdap, that is tetanus, diphtheria, or cellular pertussis, to be given every 10 years. Varicella vaccine should be administered, and MMR vaccine. These should be made mandatory for all healthcare workers. Some children come up with some inborn diseases which have got no treatment, but still you need to give them vaccines. The commonest one is someone has a bleeding disorder like hemophilia. So what can be done? You need to give them vaccines. You have no other way out. So the complication might arise that when you give a deep intramuscular vaccine, a vessel might get punctured and that might cause an hematoma. So we have to prevent that complication also. So what we can do is vaccination can be scheduled in these cases shortly after administering a clotting factor, if the route is IM. Means if that vaccine is to be compulsorily given intramuscular only, administer clotting factor before giving the vaccine. That reduces the chances of bleeding after vaccination. Second thing what we can do is to reduce bleeding. You can use a smaller needle. We can give it intramuscular, but not deep intramuscular. A firm pressure should be applied on the site of vaccine, of the site of administration of vaccine, for 5 to 10 minutes, so that the pressure can prevent oozing from the bleeder, from the vessel, and therefore firm pressure, but it should not be rubbed vigorously. Just a pressure application of pressure is necessary, is enough. If a vaccine can be given intramuscular and subcutaneous, if the same vaccine can be given intramuscular and subcutaneous, then in that case give that vaccine subcutaneously, because subcutaneous area does not have that many vessels, that many blood supply, blood vessels, blood penetration, and it does not have any major vessel. So the chances of major bleeding, major hematoma formation is reduced. So all those vaccines which can be administered subcutaneously and intramuscularly, both those vaccines should be administered subcutaneously to reduce bleeding. In case a patient gives you a history of hypersensitivity or allergy, what to do? If for that specific vaccine the patient has given you a history, like he got an hypersensitivity reaction for chickenpox, first dose, don't administer that vaccine again. The hypersensitivity might be to the antigen, it might be to the component of the vaccine, it might be to the adjuvant, anything. So once the patient says that he had major reaction to that vaccine should never be administered again. Never. If the patient gives you an history of egg allergy, egg protein allergy, you should never administer a yellow fever vaccine to that child. You should never do that. Yes, chickenpox or measles or MMR can be given, but with caution. But yellow fever, a big no. A child who gives a history of latex or rubber allergy should never be inoculated using a disposable syringe. In these cases, you should always use a glass syringe because he has got an allergy and that can lead to anaphylaxis. As already spoken of, interchangeability of brands, it is not always possible that you can give the same brand which the patient had last time at some other doctor. The WHO considers this as a problem and it has given some guidelines. Those are doses of vaccine in a series from the same brand are generally preferred. But what if you don't have the same brand? You can administer a vaccine of the same component that are readily available from another producer. They should have the same component, same antigens, not less, not more, not different. They should have the same component, same antigen, and then you can interchange the brands. That is acceptable. The only exception for this is HPV, human papilloma virus. There are two preparations available. One is the bivalent, one is the quadrivalent. You can interchange any of those for any of them. Never interchange the type of vaccine. Like the first dose was wholesale pertussis, the second was a cellular pertussis, the third one was again a wholesale pertussis. Don't do that. Keep the type of antigen same. Second example will be the first dose of hepatitis A was inactivated vaccine, the second dose is live vaccine. Don't do that. Keep the type of vaccine same. We are using nowadays combination vaccines, but they can be readily interchanged with monovalent vaccine and they give you the same immune response. Like first time you had a hexavalent vaccine and now you don't have the hexavalent vaccine, you use a pentavalent vaccine, the 5 components are going to give you the same immune response as that of the 6 responses. Or you are using the pentavalent vaccine and you don't have that combination vaccine, you have a single vaccine of Hib and a separate vaccine of DPT. Don't mix it, give them at 2 different sites, but they are going to evoke the same immune response that the combination vaccine had done. So you can interchange the monovalent vaccine with a combination vaccine. Post vaccination, do a few things to keep yourself legally safe. Complete and maintain all the records on the same vaccination sheet. Pre-vaccination, you had taken the consent, written consent. Post-vaccination, complete the record. All vaccines nowadays come with a sticker tag. Remove that sticker from the vial and post it or paste it on the vaccine card so that if the patient comes up with some reaction, you have a thing that yes, this was of this batch, you can trace out the batch, you can give it. The patient might say they had used, the doctor had used an expired vaccine, you have that sticker which mentions its expiry date, and when you have given, you have written it out, so that can help you, prevent you from landing up in a problem in medico-legal cases. So complete and maintain the records adequately with the patient and with you also. After giving the vaccine, the patient might develop any reaction within the first 10 minutes. That would be the major reaction, which will require immediate medical intervention. So after giving the vaccine, don't let the patient off immediately. Ask the patient to wait in the waiting room for another 10 to 20 minutes. Monitor the patient, and before letting him go, recheck him, re-examine him, and after that, let him go. If the patient complains of any adverse event following immunization, that is AEFI, report that AEFI to the immunizing officer of the district or the hospital, so that that can be recorded and traced the cause of that AEFI. Don't just leave off or don't take the AEFI lightly. These things need to be done post vaccination. You can further get the guidelines and details at these sites. Please visit our Komar web page on Facebook, where you can find all these presentations again. Anytime you can go and access it. Thank you.